Hello everybody, Joe Bagdones here. Welcome back for another episode of MiHoYo. Last time, we mainly just hung around with Sojiro and talked with the Vice President of the Student Council, Tsukiji. At least I think it was Tsukiji. Two of those syllables are at least right. Don't get on me. I don't want to say super intoxicated. I had the buzz going by the end, which is why I just realized right before I started recording, I'm like, did I actually put in that cut when I left to go get another beer, like an hour in? And then I checked on YouTube, and sure enough, I did it. So there's just like 2 minutes of dead air. Oops. What can you do? Fortunately for you guys, I'm not drinking beer today. I just got a big old-fashioned instead. Because it's my weekend, and I wanna have a nice sip. But it's not that strong. I made like a tall one in a tall glass instead of like a normal whiskey glass because all my whiskey glasses are dirty and I'm too lazy to put them in the washing machine. Well, not the washing machine. Put clothes in a washing machine in the dishwasher. So it's like a double. It's a little more orange than it should be, but that's because I don't have any bitters, and the Class 6 on base didn't have any bitters either for some reason. They only had Campari, so I just threw that in there instead. And when I throw in the cherries, I like to put in a little juice from the macchiato cherry jar. So it's got a nice tint to it, and it's only like 3 shots in total, and not even like big, like tall shots, like normal shot glass size shots. So as long as I'm sipping it over time, it'll be fine. I also didn't have any simple sugar because I'm too lazy to make any at the moment, so I just put in some normal granulated sugar. Anyway, mixology class is over. Let us continue the story. The school day over, Sojiro headed straight to his job. While the school had approved of his job at the Chinese restaurant and fish market in Misaki Shopping District, there was another work that he hadn't mentioned to them. It's not because he knew they would complain at him. They would complain at him working too many, but rather because of the illicit nature of one job in particular. Hustle and grind, baby, hustle and grind. Today, his workplace was a pachinko parlor in front of the Yashirogi station. I can't do pachinko, it's too loud. I don't do good with loud noises. Take that how you will. Sojiro changed out of his school uniform and went into a black faux tuxedo uniform and began cleaning the storefront. Faux facts, I don't know, man, I don't read French. Yashirogi was the jewel of Misaki City, a busy place with a vast assortment of commercial centers and shopping arcades. Where there were people en masse, there were products made en masse. A romantic might describe it as a place of joy. A realist would note the free enterprise, and a cynic would point at all the garbage. Local authorities had attempted to beautify Yashirogi, but there was one basic tenet of society they could not overcome. This establishment was the embodiment of that rule. Businesses such as this attracted the dregs of society, and as such, the front of the parlor had to be cleaned several times a day. Sojiro stood outside in the winter cold, sweeping used-up cigarette butts, picking up discarded flyers, and tossing empty cans into the trash. Something about it must have reminded him of mountain life, because he cheerfully finished the job with ease. Yeah, it's like picking up leaves. Except these leaves are gross and have, like, spit and mucus in them. After making sure that the storefront was acceptably clean, he returned to the inside of the parlor, where it was nice and warm. Blinding lights, deafening sounds, and the oppressive odor of tobacco assaulted him as he passed through the parlor on his way to the office. It's also why you smoke a pipe. You don't gotta worry about where to put your cigarette butts, and you can just, like, put the ash on the ground and, like, kind of grind it with your foot, and then it just gone with the wind.
Hi, ご苦労様。それでいいかな。2階の40番台のお客さんの様子見てきてくれない？
Got a rowdy one, or they've been there for a while?
どうも懐に飲んでそうなんだよね。あのお姉さん。
You can cheat at pachinko? What is he, like, tilting the machine? His boss was a good-natured man who used to work a desk job. The reason he employed someone like Sojiro, even though he was clearly a student, was not because he admired his work admired him for working his way through school. This is because all the other employees were scary and intimidating, and he wanted at least one normal employee who was not.
いいんですか？トイレの掃除まだですけど。
いいのいいの。なんかね、カメラの死角にいるんでいまいち確証取れないの。
You really think Sojiro's the man for the job to go confirm whether someone is cheating and gambling? Just gonna walk him and be like, hey, you cheating?
そうちゃん、今のところ的中率 100% でしょ。様子見てきてくれないかな。
Hearing that, Sojiro put away his cleaning equipment and headed upstairs. It was a typically large-scale pachinko parlor with 2 floors. It prided itself on being a local establishment that was satisfied with taking the locals' money little by little without resorting to more exploitative means. But regardless of the parlor's intentions, its customers were not so scrupulous. Among them were casual players, professional gamblers, and cheaters looking to profit by exploiting whatever loopholes they could find. Of particular prevalence was a device deployed in the mid-80s that could disrupt a machine's circuitry from the outside, making it much easier to get what was called a 777 jackpot. As much as the parlor wanted to deny these cheaters entry, it needed to present hard evidence of cheating, or risk losing customers. Particularly in the service industry, innocent until proven guilty was not a rule taken lightly. As a result, they could only punish the customers they caught in the act. Such cheaters were known as gotoshi, a slice of society which Sojiro knew nothing about. What he did know was that they were inconveniencing his employer and violating the rules. He went upstairs. The radio and game machine sounds at the second floor were quieter than the cacophony downstairs. There were 100 game machines on the ground floor and over 80 on the second. While there were some empty seats here and there, it was a solid evening turnout. The machine mentioned by his boss was in the center aisle. Sojiro nonchalantly leaned back against the wall and watched the customer hit the jackpot over and over again. I recognize that ass anywhere! The second he saw her, his gut told him that she was not cheating. So was not sure what made someone a master swindler, but if it meant they were special, this woman clearly fit that description. It's almost as if he could feel the luck emanating from her. As the customers looked on, she silently turned the handle again and again. She appeared older than Sojiro. She wore a green, form-fitting one-piece dress. A pair of stockings covered her legs. Her slender legs were gracefully crossed, and her elegance suited a painting better than a casino. Her dark, reddish hair was cut short in a bob, perfectly framing her stylish spectacles and crimson lips. Truth be told, something was off about this picturesque beauty ringing the jackpot over and over again. 4 boxes worth of pachinko balls sat at her feet, and her winning streak showed no signs of abating. She looked bored as her slender porcelain fingers lifted a long cigarette to her lips. Just as that thought crossed his mind, his gaze turned over the wall and Sojiro. Those special eyes. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. He reflexively covered his mouth to keep from shrieking. Acting on pure instinct, Sojiro took off running. He headed straight downstairs, desperate to not be on the same floor as her. He would have run straight out the door, but for his obligations to his job.
店長、早退します。それと、2階の人は問題ないです。
Tried to keep his composure as he spoke, jamming his school uniform into a paper bag as he ran out of the parlor. Cloudy weather brought the shadow of night over Yashirogi as he ran through the shopping arcade towards the station. He shot up the long staircase like an arrow, quickly pulled his train pass from his wallet, and passed through the ticket gate. The ticket gate was crowded with people standing around, walking and talking. The station attendant by the automatic ticket machine had an unpleasant look on his face. There was now a familiar, comforting hustle and bustle around him. Just another day in the city. Nothing like what he'd witnessed the night before. So, we gonna flash back to that? We're gonna have to eventually. He could finally breathe again. The momentary rush of relief brought him to an abrupt stop. He nervously turned around. There's no way that dangerous individual could be behind him.
考えてみると
Couldn't think of a good reason for why he'd fled so desperately. As far as he could remember, he hadn't even seen the threat's face long enough to form an opinion about her. Sojiro gave himself a good slap on the cheek to pull himself together, and quickly made his way down to the platform. Unfortunately, the next train was 10 minutes away, and panicking would do him no favors, so he quietly found an empty seat and sat down. Took another deep breath. He was surrounded by people waiting for the train, just like he was, and no sign of anyone pursuing him. His head finally cleared up, and he reassured himself that he was overthinking things. Though, he was surprised at how heavy his shoulders felt.
疲れてるのは分かってる自分の体のことだし
Sojiro sighed at his greater-than-ever expected fatigue. Did I throw an ever in there? Greater than expected, weird. He had certainly struggled since coming down from the mountains, but in retrospect, could have been worse. Physically, he was probably holding up fine. He was much less confident in his mental state. The city in the mountains could not have been more different. He had been slow to recognize the difference and adapt. Acclimation was simple enough. Humans were nothing if not adaptable. Even without any effort, one would learn to adjust over time. Recognizing the challenges that had been the hard part.
そりゃ
In reading
と
is
に
the
か
hard
く
part for
難
me.
しいことだらけだし
Sojiro grumbled a complaint he'd never uttered before. To be honest, he was still afraid to wander around town. There were so many things city people took for granted that Sojiro had yet to grasp. It's little wonder that this never-ending chain of surprises would wear on him.
そっか疲れてるのは体じゃないのか
Sheer thinking box.
だからあんな幻を見る
He muttered to himself, then shook his head. That which exists, exists. Such was the way of all things. Tobimaru had called it a hallucination. Sojiro knew what he saw was real. The city was a magical kingdom compared to the mountains. If there were real magicians secretly living here, that should have been no surprise at all. The thought alone made his legs tremble. It took him a moment longer to realize that they were quivering out of fear. He had feared the unnatural ever since he encountered a wild bear on the mountain path as a child.
いやあれはこんなもんじゃなかったっけなりふり構わず泣き叫んだもん
I
な
ran into a bear once as a kid. It's when I was up visiting my grandparents. We were on a walk, but we had the dog with us, so it just barked at it. It was a black bear, so that, you know, they're a little fucking scaredy cat. So a dog barked at him, and it go woo, and it fucking ran away. Sojiro smiled a little as he recalled his traumatic childhood memory. Anyone would have fainted at the sudden appearance of a growling beast that towered over 6 feet tall. Are we talking like at the shoulder or on its hind legs? The monster in the movie that Sojiro saw not 2 days ago was the equivalent of a cuddly stuffed animal when compared to wild mountain creatures. He was reminded that he faced far worse before, and his ordeal now was something he could endure.
そうだよな今の問題はちらっと聞こえた最後のセリフか
Huh?
捕まえて始末するっていうのはどうなんだ
Oh, what someone else said. At face value, the meaning was obvious, but the implications were simply too frightening to contemplate seriously. Perhaps he had misheard the words, or perhaps the speaker had
都
misspoke.
会のルール誰かがきっと罰しに来る
You saw something you shouldn't have. Even as he said it, the idea didn't feel quite real. It was hard to imagine that it applied to him. Sojiro breathed in and closed his eyes. His vision dimmed, putting the illuminated cityscape out of sight and out of mind. For now, he resolved to put last night's events behind him. when he opened his eyes and his breathing had calmed.
それでさ、青崎を殴りつけようとして結局どうなったんだ？飛び。
The question suddenly popped into Sojiro's head. He decided he would ask next time, and stood up from his chair. A long streak of light blazed by, announcing the arrival of the next train. Probably got his fucking ass kicked. He might have got off, like, the sucker punch, but after that, you know, retaliation was probably swift and brutal. Hooray! Oh, save? Save. Yes. No. Fuck. Yes. Excellent. Let's swing into the archive, see if there's any 0.5 chapters this time. Nope. Cool. Makes my life a whole lot easier. Next episode, por favor. Knights. Knights what? Just the knights? Something belonging to the night, the night's secrets? Ooh. Let me tell you how the events of yesterday transpired. On moonless nights, you must never look back. Was it a lesson, or was it a warning? It was so very long ago. At the time, I could not have imagined what my very being would become. One night came without warning. I was filled with an anxiety so heightened that it made me want to burst into tears, so I fled to my grandfather's workshop. Unlike the grandfather I knew, he smiled and kindly placed his hand upon my head. Yes, the Red Death follows your every step. Rather than consoling me, he sent me home with only those haunting words. That night, I'm certain I sensed a shadow lurking behind me. Something or someone was watching me from afar. Then, little by little, year by year, it drew closer. Eventually, the presence that once felt like a spot on the horizon grew so close I could feel its breath down the base of my neck. Of course, it was all in my mind. When I turned around, nobody was there. But that night marked the beginning. In hindsight, I understood that the indescribable anxiety I felt was the dread of certain death. Yeah, just don't think too hard about it. Out of sight, out of mind is better. With that feeling. Not creepy at all, they're just here in the dark. How much time had passed since that night? It lingered deep in the recesses of my mind where childhood memories are kept. A faded, storybook-esque memory. On dark nights, I still hear the faint echo of my grandfather's words. But no matter how strong the wind may howl, or how entrancing the song of the girl next to me, I can never bury his ominous words completely. The girl beside me said. I'm pretty sure we're back in Alco perspective. Alice's inflectionless voice spoke volumes of her role as the bystander. That night, there was only me and her. It was the night I would mark the birth of who I am today. For what should have been quite the memorable night, it sure wasn't a promising start. Dense clouds blocked out the starlight above like a black umbrella. Strong wind tore through the sky, carrying the heavy clouds with it. The hands of the clock in the middle of the park pointed skywards, as if reaching for the moon. Unfortunately for them, tonight there was no moon to point at. The winter air grew fiercer as the night wore on. Inhaling felt as though it would freeze me from the inside. The air chilled me to the bone, threatening to pass up my spine directly to my brain. To prevent my mind from being paralyzed, and to prevent my fingertips from becoming stone, I sparked a fire using my internal rhythm and emotion. Cool. I don't know what that means, but I responded to Alice with a nod. And then, for just a moment, I saw the ground. My legs quivered ever so faintly. I told myself they were shaking from the cold, but I wasn't so sure. In reality, They may not have been numbed by the cold, but by fear. I breathe a sigh of relief. My humanity must still be intact if my emotions are still present. Ooh. Before I could sink into a pool of my own sentimentality, sensations from the bounded field flowed from Alice into me. A transparent wall covered the entire park. An unrecognizable carpet rooted deep under the earth. Alice Kuonji's chants of the Mother Goose fairy tales permeated the night. The sensations became one with my body. Ooh, are those your magic circuits? Neat pattern. I felt goosebumps on my quivering right arm. Someone had trespassed. The goosebumps crept up my right arm like ants, and slowly but surely made inroads for my heart. Holding back the desire to drive them out, I waited for them to reach a certain, definitive position. A moonless night. The park's quaint streetlights were not enough to lift the darkness. The ants came to a stop. Far, far from my right arm, they had reached my very heart. Even without the aid of my sense of sight, I could see the intruder lurking in the darkness. To starboard, in the bushes about 30 steps back, on all fours, it was beckoning with its right hand. Starboard is the right, if you don't know. Weird that she's using ship positions, but you do you, girl.
Soko!
The enemy's movement and my perception of it were in lockstep. I spun around. The enemy's arm stretched out like a spear. This lethal weapon, aimed at the back of my head, brushed my hair at breakneck speed. With the ominous view granted by Alice's ward, I managed to avoid it by the skin of my teeth. Omniscient, not ominous. Ooh, a puppet arm. Weird. I wonder who uses puppets around here. My hair fanned through the air from the violence of the attack. An attack grazed my cheek and I felt a small, sharp pain. It felt like the kiss of death. I switched the flow of my body's blood into a different cycle. The blood running through my veins at a few feet per second transmuted into an imaginary element. My body became a single circuit, and my heart transformed into a completely different engine. An unknowable motion of immeasurable heat. A mystic, yet untapped by humankind, that made me who I am. The fire of my life behind all miracles and fables. This is what we mages call magical energy.
Setto.
I turned around, set the enemy in my sights, and held up one hand. My arm was the agent of my will. My lack of experience meant my magecraft would only be possible with the use of vocalizations and gestures. Magical formulae were engraved all over the park. All I had to do was ignite them. I needed to direct the flow of the magical energy within my body into each formula. Typically, a mage acts as a conduit. Whether wired or wireless, a mage simply pours magical energy into a formula. Releasing this energy in the form of a projectile, stream, or any number of other methods would usually suffice. But in my case, it was the feeling of my limbs whipping out.
Moira!
Fireball! I fought speed with speed. The enemy's arm, extended 10 feet forward, became engulfed in flames. Also, I wonder what her magic crest looks like. If she even has one. Considering her arm glue, glowed? Is that the past tense of glow? I don't know. I'm not a dictionary, but yeah. The scene, reminiscent of a campfire, but one in which the center of the flames contained a humanoid figure wriggling like a shadow puppet. The flame subsided just as unnaturally as it had ignited. No crackling, no burning smell.
結界返すわ。死体を確認するから。
You gonna double tap it? Or just fucking walk right up to it? After telling this to Alice, I headed towards the motionless figure. I killed it. I killed it. Well, was it even alive to begin with? I killed it. Regardless of who my opponent was, I just took someone's life. My throat parched. I swallowed the truth that without this sense of reality, I would not have been... what? I swallowed the truth that without this sense of reality, I would have been helpless. So hard and bitter, impossible to swallow, but I tried to anyway. I was unnervingly calm. My heart pounded and my breath felt heavy, but my mind was nonetheless calm. By the time I realized it, the charred remains were already in front of me. Bracing for a counterattack, I carefully examined the corpse. Everything seemed fine. The body lying slumped to the ground was nothing but ash. But something wasn't right. To begin with, its remains didn't smell organic. Not willing to believe my hunch, I took a closer look at the corpse's face. All that greeted me was the featureless white face of a mannequin. Screaming, I kicked the mannequin. The corpse crumbled to ash and disappeared with the wind. No, this was no corpse, just a puppet. And all of our efforts to lure the master out, we had once again been tricked by a familiar. My debut, my first test out in the open, would be postponed for another day. You got played.
いつになったら一人前にって。
Also, if you were complaining so much about the cold, why are you just wearing a skirt and some leggings? Like, at least throw on a pair of jeans. At that moment, I suddenly noticed something familiar in the corner of my eye. Something seemed strange about the slide on the other side of the park. It appeared as though its shadow were larger than it should be. Was I still drunk on the high of battle? It took me a mere second to realize what it was. Calling out was a mistake. Startled by my voice, the figure, wearing a familiar high school uniform, took a step back, and then it broke into a sprint, like someone running for their life. Should I say, he was doing exactly that? In a rush, I shouted to my partner, but she hadn't even noticed the third person's presence in the first place. Though, it wasn't as if I could move by myself. Embarrassingly, the fight had taken more out of me than I'd have liked. There was no time for niceties. For us, being seen here was a matter of life and death. Shaking off the numbness in my legs, I made for the park's exit. I had to admire his escape. The witness, party to the entire night's proceedings, had disappeared into the darkness of the residential district without a trace. Complaining to myself wouldn't bring back the figure in uniform. Bitter at my own incompetence, I gave up the chase. Though temporary, the park had become Alice's woods. For anyone within a few feet of the park, other parkgoers' unidentifiable features and voices became murky, like the stuff of fairy tales. Anyone within a few feet of the park, other parkgoers... Okay, so looking in, you can't tell who it is. Tonight's proceedings may have had a witness, but if our identities were still hidden, then this was still a chance. I returned to the park. That uniform was, without a doubt, from my high school. That was clue enough. If he was a schoolmate of mine, I had plenty of methods to flush him out. Yeah, when it rains, it pours. Amidst my grumbling, I set my priorities straight. Before some strange rumors spread, I needed to seal the witness's mouth shut. That was the highest priority, quickly and without mercy. Looking up, I saw Alice's previously distant figure. Though she was in as much trouble as I was, with her existence as a magus also exposed, she had but one thing to say.
これは困ったことにな
Yeah,
った。
oops. More work on the plate. Her statue-like figure, staring into the darkness, seemed more expressionless than calm. I was pissed off. Her inscrutable voice resembled the moonless night so much that it made me angry. I think you're just taking your anger out on whatever at the moment. Blues in her name. Archive. Cool. Moving on. If I can figure out how to use the Switch controller with one hand. It's disorientating because I'm holding it like upright, like it would be if it was like actually plugged into the console or like one of the little controller adapters. But because I only have the one of them, it wants to be like horizontal. So when I push up on my stick, it's actually moving it right. There really isn't any other way of saying this. I'm a magician. No, you're a magus. You're not a magician yet. Kind of like those witches in fairy tales who live alone in the woods and perform miracles with a wave of a finger. While the popular depiction of it differs from reality, that's closer to the truth than you know. Though just so we're clear, no, I don't fly through the air on a broom. I cannot transform into animals or speak with small birds. Modern mages are nothing so fanciful. Yeah, they kind of stuck. I mean, they kind of suck. Our existence sounds unbelievable, but we're quite grounded. Though it may seem like we can do anything, we're actually majorly constrained. And while I still have a lot to learn about it, this is my real job. Sounds a lot more romantic than being a high school student, right? Naturally, this is a secret I don't just share with anyone. A mage must do everything in their power to conceal their work. This is the first and most important of the association's 10 laws. Not that I'm tempted to let the cat out of the bag in the least. My secret identity as an honor student is intact. Absolutely no good would come of me revealing my true nature. If anything, it'd only lead to more headaches. That's why I do everything in my power to keep it a secret. Of course, if I'd accomplished anything as a magician by now, then maybe I'd see it differently. I fantasized about revealing my secret life's work to a single special person when I finally make something of myself. Yeah, it'd be pretty stellar to just confess one day, by the way, I'm a magician. The idea alone is enough to keep me from spoiling the big reveal, regardless of the association's rules. My grandfather patted me on the head when I shared those thoughts with him. I don't know if that was praise or what, but I remember that his touch was gentle. I first learned that I would be succeeding my grandfather the day I graduated middle school. When I returned home, there he was. Your elder sister left on her journey. From this day forth, you are the heir to the Aozaki. He said in such a matter-of-fact way. I knew that the Aozaki family passed down this old tradition of magecraft, but to be honest, I never imagined that I would be the one to wield it. Magecraft is supposed to be passed down to a single child. It was my sister's role to take the mantle, and I had no interest in dedicating myself to so many rules and routines. I'd planned to live a normal life. I had hopes and dreams for the future. I felt bad for my sister, but I was determined to live my life my way. And while I managed to do just that for a time, I was blindsided by a vicious counterpunch. Since then, I've been thrust headlong into a world that I only observed from afar. It was a hell of a way to start high school. But I suppose it wasn't all bad, all things considered. Damn, so fucking Toko just flaked, and it's like, well, time to start your training. A little late. A lot has happened since then. I was so dazed by this newfound life that a year of school motored right by. I was a second year before I knew it. Thankfully, nothing drastic has happened. In 6 months, my roommate and I totally tried to kill each other. But The 6 months my roommate and I totally tried to kill each other, notwithstanding. As it happens, I've got a natural talent at this magic stuff, so I've yet to have any hang-ups there either. I'm only human, so I've had my fair share of headaches for sure, but never once did I worry about my future. I thought my life would be smooth sailing all the way. If only everything had gone to plan last night.
どう？
Alice Kuonji asked Aoko Aozaki the second she entered the house. Her dark eyes succeeded where her voice failed to communicate the gravity of the situation. Aoko took off her unflattering coat, hung it up on the hanger, and sat down on the sofa. Alice sat across from her, with the table separating them.
そっちは？
よくないわね。偵察に行けるのは7個くらい。ここのところ使ってばかりで作り置きをする余裕もなかったし。
You got little familiars running about? Alice's gaze drifted from Aoko to the box on the table.
あの夜、町を監視していた奴はいないの？町の偵察は完璧なんでしょ？そいつら。
それは昼間の話よ。夜間飛行は危険が多いわ。
Yeah, you know, they could just fucking bop right into telephone poles. You know, as an example. Meaning they were of least use when they were needed the most. Aoko sighed.
そういうあなたは朝は随分と強気だったけど。
ああ、こっちは予定通りよ。明日までには絞り込めると思う。今朝、飛び丸にうちの生徒の自宅と行動時間を調べさせたから。
That's a strange request.
あの時間に公園をうろつくやつはめったにいないし、
To see who would
簡
be
単
on,
に
you
割り出
know,
せる。
on their way home. I gotcha.
そう簡単に行くの？
Unless, you know, say it was someone out on a late night delivery.
行くわよ。伊達に生徒会に勤めてないわ。その程度のデータは揃えてある。
Yep,
月
job
1の
comes
バ
with
イト
some
先はお
perks.
ろか、親しい友人宅との移動時間、その優先順位まで調べ上げてるんだから。人には見せたくなかったリストだけど、そんな余裕ないでしょ？だから、
Mhm.
そういうのが向いてる副会長にやらせたの。
Incidentally, the creation of this secret file started the moment Aoko became student council president. The mere rumor of its existence was enough to strike fear into the entire student body.
そう。徹底しているわね。
Alice was only mildly surprised. It had been almost 2 years since they first started living together. She knew as well as anyone that when Aoko put her mind to something, she saw it through to the end.
ま、私もあれがこんな風に役立つとは思ってもみなかったけど。
I keep cutting him off. I gotta stop doing that. But what happened last night was far beyond a mere exception to the rule. This predicament should not have even been possible.
それより、原因は分かったの？結界の結びに不手際があったなんてのは聞かないわよ。
Aoko glared at her. The ward was Alice's responsibility. If it was to blame for last night's trouble, Alice had to own up to her fair share. Alice and Aoko may have been roommates and partners, but it was a relationship of convenience. While lineage had brought them together, they were more like enemies than allies. Ultimately, they were just not a match. Where there a blunder, it was punished. Where there was an opening, it would be attacked. If there was ever an opportunity, the two of them would kill each other in the event of such a moment. Alice locked eyes with Aoko. Aoko's fierce gaze could make a grown man cower in fear, but Alice did not bat an eyelash.
仮の話だけど、あの結界に落ち度があったのなら、今まで何度もこういう状況になっていたでしょうね。
I suppose you're right, Aoko agreed, as the question reaffirmed her trust in Alice.
結界のあり方は完璧だったのね。
絶対とまでは断言はできないけど。
Alice answered as flatly as ever. A bounded field is like a sanctuary sealed away from the real world. Steps are taken whereby a certain area is cut off from the outside world. There are various kinds of bounded fields. There are physical ones that close off an area behind a wall, and less tangible ones that use mirrors, mist, or trees to conceal that which occurs within. However, when closing off an area to the outside world, you cannot avoid communicating the abnormality's existence. In other words, the area may be closed off to the outside world, but it is impossible to hide the fact that it is closed off. In time, someone will take interest in the sealed off area, even if they cannot see what's going on inside. Some might say this is putting the cart before the horse. The ideal field would be one that is both undetectable and impervious to interference from the outside. That was exactly the kind Alice had generated in the park the night before.
その場所に用があっても、今はないように思わせれば、誰もそこには立ち入らない。
The kind that makes people just ignore things, you know, that they don't even notice that it's there. I'm pretty sure... Oh god, what's the magic Ilia does? It's brought up in Hollow Ataraxia, where she can do this thing where it just makes people completely unaware of her existence. So that way she can stalk Shiro at school.
隠したい場所の周りに一時的な意識の改ざんを促
For
す
some reason it didn't work on Issei. Weird.
手間はかかるんだけど、1時間程度の人よけには信頼性は高い結界よね。アリスの鏡を使った一級品だし、途中で破れることもない。事実、入ってきたのはあの人形だけだとはっ
Yeah,
き
so
り
it's not
感
like
じ
the
られ
field
た。
was broken.
これで完璧じゃなかったら何が完璧なのよ。
私もわからない。
Unless Sojiro is just so
森作りの一度は
plain,
なかったわ。
his existence isn't even picked up by fucking magic.
森は数日かけて栽培したものだし、今まで通り信頼できる結界よ。けど例外があったのなら、どこかで見落としがあったのね。
Or he has some other X factor. Although Alice's words concealed the possibility, her eyes expressed her confidence that she had overlooked nothing.
参った。こうなると一番いいのはあいつが人形使いだってパターンね。それならかろうじて納得できる。
But then you gotta worry
相
about
手
the
が魔
enemy
術師なら
being in
結
your
界の
school.
侵入ぐらいできるでしょうし。問題は侵入した時の違和感をどうやって消したかってことだけど。
The thought of being targeted by this individual was pretty terrifying. They were able to penetrate Alice's field. It could only mean that their skill in magecraft was superior to Alice's. Alice, in her current state, would be completely helpless against such a foe.
その線はないわ。彼は部外者よ。ムクドリはともかく、ロビンが後をたどれなかったもの。魔力の気配は全くなし。誰かの魔術で操られている犠牲者というのもないわね。
For a moment, I read pawn as prawn, and I'm like, the big magic shrimp? Making me hungry. Aoko was quickly running out of straws to grasp at. And that meant she was out of questions to ask. All she could do was call it bad luck and leave it at that.
魔術師の秘密を見られて、おまけに目撃者を逃がした。
Yeah, that's quite the blunder.
普通の高校生の悩みじゃないな。
Wait till you got adult problems and you gotta start paying taxes. Sofa groaned as she leaned back. Her gaze went up to the brown ceiling and with a sigh. It wasn't much of a view. She was becoming increasingly depressed.
青子、覚悟を決めておいて。
Yeah, something still needs to be done. Her roommate's voice seemed indifferent. But Aoko just kept staring up at the wooden ceiling.
それとも、あなたにできないのなら、私が言ってあげてもいいけ
It's
ど。
like we need to call someone else in to catch a spider or smush a cockroach. The cool-mannered girl's statements carried an equally icy implication. Aoko took the words and slowly, with as much sincerity as she could muster. It was like trying to swallow molten lead.
そうだ。覚悟なんてもう決めたでしょ。
The thought sounded hollow, even as it popped into her head. This was clearly different from last time. While the aim was indeed the same, the circumstances surrounding her target were clearly different. She may have been determined before, but that was as a mage. If enemies emerged, she would kill them. If she was challenged, she would step up to the fight. It was a fight between two mages, and her opponent was in the wrong. Even if it could only end in death for one of them, it was an outcome both parties could accept. But a bystander? Kill or be killed. Morality had no weight on this scale. But this time was different. Her opponent was neither enemy nor mage. Even if she was prepared to kill them, this person was likely not ready to die. That's why morality did factor into it now. Was she truly up to the task of murdering an innocent person? Could she swallow the fact that this was a common occurrence for a mage? She snorted sardonically. Being a mage did not mean that Aoko was some kind of monk who could cut ties with the real world on a whim. If there was one thing Aoko hated, it was doing things without conviction or understanding of exactly why she was doing them. When she acted, she preferred to act decisively.
ま、やるしかないだろうね。
Yep, gotta fucking whack him. And as she said it, she got up from the sofa, having had her fill of the ceiling for one day. Aoko had returned to the Aoko of always, and Alice was done probing her.
じゃあこれ
As if to reward her, Alice produced a small bottle. Why'd you rip the label off? Unless you're just reusing it. It fit neatly in the palm of her hand. The bottle looked completely out of place in her slender fingers. The glass was cloudy, and its appearance and it appeared empty. Some shreds of paper remained on the front where it once had a
何
label.
よそれ。
Like you couldn't have scrubbed the label off, like with some water and soap, like a good. I wouldn't want to use like steel wool because that might scratch up the glass, but like, you know, a good bristly sponge. Aoko stared at the bottle suspiciously.
収納の小瓶ちょうど一つ余ってたからあげるわ。
はい。
Just a bottle? Gonna go out and catch a fairy in it? Have a heel on standby?
名前は忘れたけど中国の小説に出てきたのと同じよ。
What is it, a fucking bottle of opium? Aoko was miraculously able to parse what Alice meant.
それってレンゲ堂の兄弟の話？じゃああの赤いひょうたんと同じなわけ？
Whoosh, over my head it goes.
言いたくないけど、そこら辺の風邪薬のラベルを無理やり剥がして小瓶に見せかけてるそれが？
Yeah, where are you going with this? Alice looked at the bottle and acknowledged how ordinary it looked. She also understood that she would not be the one using it as she set it on the table.
赤いひょうたんじゃなくて陽子玉の上瓶の方。
It's actually brown. Also, man, that is a tiny little hand.
そういう問題じゃない。私は魔術師としての雰囲気を論じてるんだ。
些細なことを気にするのね。せいろがんの瓶じゃないだけいいと思うけど。
Mm-hmm. Also, what the fuck are you guys talking about? I have no idea what this gourd is. She made a good point.
蓋を開けて相手の名前を尋ねればいいから。
Oh, it's a magic item.
ただし相手に抵抗する意志が残っている場合、小瓶は割れるから気をつけて。
Put on some safety goggles. Naoko raised her eyebrows.
ちょっと待った。抵抗する意志があるとダメって眠っている時に
I
やれ
don't
ってこ
know,
と？
unless he's got like passive magic resistant buffs. I don't know. Fuck, man.
それは試したことがなかったわ。眠っているのに返事をする人っているの？
たまにいるけど。まあ確かに珍しいわね、そういう。
In that case, one would have to weaken them until they were about to pass out.
そうそう。薬や魔術がかかっていると その重さでも割れるから気をつけて。
What do you mean drugs?
使えない。それってほとんど役立たずってことじゃない。
それは青子次第ね。
Alice turned away as she replied, as if the topic no longer mattered to her.
はあ、アリスがこういう小道具好きなのは知ってたけどね。これも趣味なわけ？
Ako asked, hoping Alice would deny it.
多分。それでどうするの？持っていくのか行かないのか。
Without answering, Alco dithered a bit before taking the bottle and putting it in her pocket. She figured she might be able to find some use for it. Two hours had passed and the clock struck 9. Conversation had moved from the drawing room to the sunroom and had manifested into a kind of scene one would not expect in such a mansion.
まあ本当はね、飛び丸に任せる気はなかったんだけど。
All I've had is my fucking old fashioned that I'm halfway through. I probably could have made it stronger because I'm not even feeling anything. A hot earthenware pot sat on the table. Alice spat out complaints to no one in particular as she plucked food from it with her chopsticks. A nice hot pot. Tonight, they were eating a traditional Japanese meal that looked out of place in this mansion. When it came to the kind of Japanese hot pot where all one had to do was buy and boil ingredients, it was usually Aoko's responsibility. Alice sat across from Aoko as she silently poked at the pot with a fork.
山城のやつが来るなり、しずきくんはまだ部活に入っていないから
Just learn to use
面倒見
chopsticks.
てあげて
It
くれ
makes
な
it
い
a
か
whole
な
lot easier to
なん
like
て言って
take
くるも
things
の
out
だ
of
からさ
liquid like that.
全校生徒の
Than
行
having
動
to stab
範囲
with
な
a
んて見
fork,
直
because
す
then
気
you
力
have to
な
like
くなっ
push
ちゃ
it
った
all the
わ
way down to the bottom or like to the side where you get enough like pushback where the fork sinks in. The egg she had plucked was still as silky as a baby's bottom, so she returned it to the pot. She settled for the shirataki noodles instead. Fight over the good
あの
stuff.
バカがバイトで忙しいのは知ってるわよ。だからできるだけ春先までのんびりしてて、あんなのでも親身になってくれそうな部の部長に当たってみたのに。
What you try to hook him up with?
ありがとうの一つもないってのはちょっと尺に触るわよね。ねえ、聞いてるアリス。
Well, did you even ask him what he likes to do? As if her mouth was full, she simply nodded in response. Her expression stated that she had no interest or opinion on the matter, but she at least appeared to be listening. Satisfied, Aoko nibbled on some hanpen fish cake. Cool.
そ
Don't
れ
know
に
what that
私、
is.
い
Is it
い
like
人
Naruto?
なんて言われるやつは信用できないのよ。あろうことか、飛び丸までそんなこと口走る始末だし。あれはいい人なんじゃなくて、ただぼんやりしてるだけなんだっての。
He's very earnest, and people like that in people.
だいたいあそこまで言われて怒りもしないなんてどうかしてるわ。
Even if he is a bit, you know, I don't want to call him an airhead. He's not dim either. It's just he takes things as they are, and you know, just rolls with the punches. Her thoughts went to what had happened in the student council room earlier that day. She remembered how non-responsive Sojiro had been to her words. His unconcerned face alone was enough for her to swallow the rest of her hanpan without chewing it.
何が分かってるんだなよ。
His words were a lot like those that had ended her childhood.
青子ちゃんは分かっているんだね。それでも自分であり続けられるということはとても強いことなんだよ。
Perhaps it was meant as a compliment, but she took it as a patronizing way to pity her. Because the person who said it had acted like she was looking at a wounded animal.
ま、あんな変態の言ってたことなんて今さらどうでもいいけどさ。
That episode might have made her the most confused she'd ever been in her life. Yet, what shocked young Aoko the most was to look. Yet what shocked young Aoko the most was the look of pity on the face of the person she admired the most. Lots of typos here, bud. Like, not a crazy amount, but there's enough, like, you know, if you got a couple people to read over it, you know, before, you know, shipping it, you know, you could have got these.
喧嘩
See, there's this thing called quality control and proofreaders. The abrupt comment stopped her in her tracks.
ごめん、聞いてなかった。喧嘩ってあの喧嘩？
Alice nodded.
あなたの感想だけじゃ状況はよくつかめないけど。
You had a quote-unquote fight with Sojiro.
つまり、青子はその人に喧嘩を売りたかったのね。
And he was completely unaware of you picking a fight, which just made you even angrier. Alice bit into the very last handpen. Her remark was unexpected, but completely on point.
なんでそうなるのよ。私はあんなのと1秒だって関わりたくないだけだってば。だいたいそれどころじゃないし、興味とか全くないし、会話もこれ以上ないってぐらい簡潔に切り上げたし。
But yet you went out of your way to try to get him to join a quote-unquote good club for him.
なら、どうして今そんな話をするの？
え？それは、あんたに今日の調査過程を知らせてあげたのよ。それ以外何があるっていうの？
So we're gonna have that seaweed? At least I think that's seaweed. What other reason could Alice be suggesting Aoko had for bringing it up? Well, you know, they say what the opposite emotion of hate is, you know, two sides of the same coin and all that. It'd be several hours later, in bed, that Aoko realized that she had dug her own grave.
いいけど。
Yeah, that's when those thoughts usually come to you.
ただ、青子は本当にその人が嫌いなの？
Alice ate her hot pot in silence as if she were honoring some sort of sacred ritual. Her face was as indifferent as always, but she was secretly enjoying how flustered Aoko was. Yeah, it's the little things in life. Aoko was none the wiser to this. Normally, she would have noticed immediately, but she was not quite herself at this moment.
本当にって、そりゃそうよ。気に食わないって何度も言ってるじゃない。
そう。
Damn, look at this food is making me hungry. I was gonna say I'd order a pizza after this, but it's already almost 2 a.m., which means all the pizza places around here are closed. I think the latest Domino delivers around here is like 1:30. At least on a weekday like this. I think on like Fridays and Saturdays they stay open till like 3, but even then that'd be pushing it, and I wouldn't want to inconvenience them. They'd be like cleaning up and getting ready to fucking shut down.
は？具体的にはってそんなのに理由なんて。
She trailed off as she finally realized how disagreeable she was being. She could come up with no reason why. Her instincts had told her that she was incompatible with that hick. But why such a strong reaction? More than anything in the world, Aoko hated emotions without reason and decisions made with no rationale.
嫌いなものは嫌いなんだから、ちゃんとどっかに理由があるんだと思うけど。
But there must be an underlying reason somewhere. She became more flustered the more she talked. Unfortunately for her, she could not come up with a coherent reason to hate Sojiro Suzuki. It was not his fault that he had zero common sense. It was the fault of the environment he grew up in. In fact, it was admirable that he was trying so hard to adapt to civilized society. As clueless as he might seem, it was not a complete waste of space. If he seemed a bit slow, it was only because his gentle nature compelled him to think before acting. When one looked at everything objectively, the conclusion was obvious. As much as she was loath to admit it, really was the good guy everyone had him pegged as.
ちょっと本気かっての。人間的に悪いところ、本当にみじんもないのかあれ。
No, he's fine. There was plenty, so she left it at that for now. The chopstick she had been using came to a stop. She was getting very annoyed. An irrational hatred burned through her head. Unable to come to terms with her feelings, she desperately tried to analyze Sojiro, but her mind only went in more circles. Alice fixed Aoko with a deadpan stare.
呆れた。
A small sigh.
らしくないわね、青子。
Those words were the final blow. Aoko felt the floor fall out from under her. She was unable to leave her chair until long after Alice had finished eating and left. It's really at that you bent out of shape, huh? However, even after getting knocked down, Aoko Ozaki was not one to be kept that way. She made short work of cleaning up after dinner, and, after conceding the first bath of the night to Alice, left the drawing room. Since it was customary in these sorts of mansions to turn off the lights when leaving an empty room, the only lit areas of the house were the drawing room and the two girls' bedrooms. The upstairs was enveloped in darkness. Aoko briskly made her way to the deepest part of the east wing along the long corridor, illuminated only by the light of the moon, and arrived at her room.
結論として、やっぱり騙し討ちは気に食わない。
You just saying that out loud to yourself? She had been considering this on the way down the corridor, or perhaps ever since she left the drawing room. The moment she entered her room, she drew her proverbial line in the sand.
やるにしても隠れるのはなし。正
You're
面
gonna
から
issue
堂々と
challenge instead of just
向かい合
fucking
って
hitting him in
理
the
由を
back
言
of the
う。
head. This was not a concession driven by feelings of sympathy or compassion. For her, it was simply the way things ought to be.
よし。そうと決まれば。
After settling her resolve, she headed to the study next door. To the workshop! Nice globe.
木曜棚の当時欄、緑の背表紙と。
Without hesitating, she removed one book from the countless volumes on the shelf. The introductory textbooks transported here from the Aozaki residence were separated into 6 shelves, labeled Monday to Saturday. Where's Sunday? Also, what an odd, division to draw for books. How does your organization system work? Aoko had organized the books by topic, genre, and purpose, and had more or less memorized exactly what was in her personal library. Referencing any of this material took her no time at all, as was befitting of the role of the keeper of this study. Though this keeper's fiefdom was nothing more than a small room. Both Aoko and Alice had given up all hopes on the cluttered mess of a library in the annex. Nonetheless, on occasion, Aoko would have no option other than to give Alice a heads up and visit it when this study did not meet her needs.
できればそれは避けたいところだけど、と。
Aoko placed a thick green book down and took a seat. The desk she sat at was sturdy, but uninviting. You got a nice mug on it, though. I like the style of that. It's like a... Oh god, what's the bluestone called? Lapis lazuli? It's like that with like a nice gold trim at the top. Very stylish. I dig it. And also like a it's either like the red thing on the desk there and on like the right center right, like next to the chair. It's either a big old can of Pringles or like one of the cardboard things a bottle of whiskey comes in. Wasn't the sort of furniture girls her age grew attached to, but she liked its minimalist elegance nonetheless. She flipped lightly through the book's old, worn pages.
アリスみたいな結界は私にはまだ無理だ。人払いはその場所自体に頼らないといけないか。
Yeah, you're just stuck fucking with magic missile. The mountains? The woods? The school building, empty at night? She's looking for a place that would be, except for the worst of luck, void of people, allowing her to forgo the usual magecraft.
茨の壁だの魔力の霧だの。そういう回りくどいのもなんだしな。退路を断つっていうなら、もっとこう見た目にも状況的に
A
も派
place
手な方
fit
が
for
効
a
果的だし。
challenge, a battle to the death. Wondering about how there had to be some basic spell to fit her needs, she continued to flip through the pages. It goes without saying that she was looking for a way to deal with the witness from the previous night. Magecraft's uses were many, but not all-encompassing. Fundamentally, magecraft was good for making things or phenomena that already existed, while more or less bypassing the time and resources conventional means would require. It was, however, unable to manifest phenomena that weren't possible in this world. It was essentially an equivalent exchange that used a variety of shortcuts. A phenomena made possible by human hands, actualized by an individual's power. That was generally what magecraft was. To give a simple example, if Aoko were so inclined, she could make an entire lake appear at the mansion. However, it had to be something that existed within this world. Nothing, not even the smallest matter, could escape this unbreakable law. Even if Aoko were to release a level of heat on par with an F-15 fighter's engine's afterburner, that event would only be possible if the circuit named Aoko Ozaki acted as a temporary input variable in a magical formula. The derived equivalence was simply a value that already occurred in reality. If the variable in the equation did not exist elsewhere in reality, the spell would not be valid. That's like fucking programming. The imaginary element known as magical energy was like a lie that could only slip its fantasy through the network of order at a moment of ignition. Giving form to the non-existent illusions invading reality was something the universe did not allow.
とは言っても、エーテルは基本何にでもできるんで、大元が嘘なんだっけ。魔力だけで構成されたものは幻想扱いされて急速に消えていくとか。典型的な結界、茨の壁とかはもともと茨を生やしておいて魔力で一気に成長強化してるものだし。魔力っていうのは結局使い勝手のいいガソリン兼事象に火をつける火花ってわけで。なんて言いつつ架空要素云々より基本的な回路の接続と
Yeah, all that complicated shit, it's all high-minded.
ないのよね。
That's why I stopped fucking doing math before it got to like calculus and imaginary numbers and all that. Laughing to herself, she looked for a bounded field or something similar, more suited to her current ability. The identity of the witness was still unknown, but if they were a classmate of Aoko's, she had a number of pretexts by which to lure them out. Use her feminine charms. The problem was after that.
そうなると
Or just normal threats of violence.
率よね。一撃で決めないと逃げられちゃうだろうし。
To be honest, she wasn't confident she could handle this smoothly without Alice's support. But Aoko saw no reason for Saw no reason to ask for help given that the target in question was a regular bystander. Fledgling as she was, she still had her pride as a mage. She continued to turn through the pages rhythmically. In the midst of the fluttering sound of thumbing through the volume, Aoko suddenly stopped her finger at a certain page.
見つけた。
She smiled to herself. It was a simple formula that she had tucked away somewhere in the recesses of her memory. A spell of simple destruction.
檻をね、作ればいいのよ。狩りをする時の常套手段じゃない。獲物を逃げられないようにするのは。
She placed a bookmark in the book, closed it, and got up to return to her room. Suddenly, She felt someone watching her. Through the window, she saw her in the night, a girl staring back with a cold-hearted expression. The girl's face was hers, the expression undoubtedly her own. She began planning how to erase the witness. Though to say it was something as elaborate as a plan was overkill. This was just a job. She was going to make a cage, then lure her prey into it. There was no getting around it. Premeditated violence. Yep, put the cold-hearted nature of yours out of mind and just not think about it. It's better that way. Spoken in hope that Bath would return some warmth to her chilled heart. About 20 minutes had passed since she had given Alice the privilege of the first of the hot water. Alice tended to bathe quickly, finishing well under 10 minutes. Her roommate was the type that could not understand the spirit of the bath, treating it as nothing more than a necessity for looking after one's body. For Alice, the concept of staying at a hot spring inn sounded more like a chore than anything, though in this regard, Alko had to agree.
Yoshi, 浴場はカラッと。あれ、今に電気ついてる?
It was unusual for Alice to sit in the drawing room after her bath. On nights when she had nothing to discuss, it was her style to return directly to her bedroom.
Alice, いるの?
You put on the same clothes you're wearing before your bath? After your bath? Ugh. Alice nodded. No book in hand, it appeared that Alice had been waiting for Alko.
そういうこと。私も信用ないな、ほんと。
Well, you're not a very reliable person. Alko scratched her head in exasperation. Was it that Alice was worried about her, or had no faith in her? Her expression was so calm, Alko had hardly figured out what she was thinking.
方針なら決まったけど、聞く?
その顔を見れば聞かなくてもわかるわ。
Really?
迷いがなくなったのはいいことだけど。悪い癖ね、青子。
Yeah, not much of a poker face. You're very expressive. Alice let out a small sigh. It was unusual for Alice to make such a display for disappointment.
ええ、騙し討ちは趣味じゃないから。殺すにしても正々堂々、正面から理由を言った後にする。それならすっぱり後腐れもないし。文句ある?
Yeah, I was about to say, why don't you just, like, erase his memories? Because mages can do that, but you're still, that's probably a little beyond you at your novice level.
文句はないわ。そういうの、好きか嫌いかはこの際関係ないでしょうし。けど、
確実性はどうかってことでしょ?
Yes.
私、いまいち命中率悪いし。その辺の問題は場所選びでフォローしようかなと。私はアリスのようにはいかないから、物理的に逃げられない場所にしようと思うんだけど、何かアイディアない?
Alice nodded in thought. A finger that gently rested on her lips indicated that the question was to her liking.
鏡はどう? 鏡の国なら永遠に閉じ込めていられるけど。
Damn, that's kind of fucked up.
あんた、そういうところ常識ないわよね。
You mean like a magical house of mirrors, or like just a regular old go to the fucking carnival and lock him in, and then like throw a mirror up at the exit so that way he can't get out? She frowned at Alice's bad taste. It was the kind of idea her roommate found to be inspired, but Alko knew was out of the question. Alko was looking for a natural bounded field she could prepare, not a realm bordering on true magic that she couldn't create to begin with.
なら他を当たるのね。でも、ここを使うのだけはやめてちょうだい。
I appreciate the intent of either go big or go home, though, Alice. Points for originality.
言われなくても分かってるって。
Yeah, you don't want to stain the carpet.
けど、そうね。ミラーハウスはいいアイディアかも。
Alko smirked and shifted her balance away from the wall she was resting on.
サンキューアリス。全体の流れは出来上がったわ。
House of Mirrors, abandoned amusement park that's being shut down and having everything taken away. Wouldn't be too many people around, especially after hours.
ほんと、こういうのってダメ元でも相談してみるものよね。
Now in a good mood, Aoko retreated from the drawing room. Alice tried and failed to visualize what kind of blueprint Aoko had drawn up in her mind, but whatever it was, it appeared that it appeared to be the thorough kind Aoko was good at. Aoko headed for the bathroom, humming to herself as she went. A year and a half of sharing a living space had taught Alice something. When Aoko Ozaki was in this good of a mood, only deep trouble could follow.
青子一人に任せていいのかですって。
It was unclear how long the bird had been in the drawing room. Chirping at Alice, the robin-like bird pranced across the furniture as if it were its property.
そうね。彼女が一人でやると言ったのだから、任せるのが正しい信頼関係なんでしょうけど。
The girl in black raised her arm. The bird, chirping once again, alighted on her outstretched, affectionate finger.
嫌な話だけど、信頼と信用はまた違う話よね。
The bird puffed out its stout chest in agreement, and Aoko was none the wiser to her roommate's rather unsettling comments. And cut, and I'm actually going to cut it this time. Alright, and I'm back, and look at that, I actually did the cut properly this time without forgetting to do it. Anyway, where were we? The following day was a typically overcast one. The day's classes ended as they had started, uneventfully. Winter break was just around the corner, and with it, final exams. Though Meisaki High prided itself on discipline, it was still a private school, and as such promoted a culture of independence among its students. Really? You'd think a private school would be a little more clamped down on that. Industrious students had a place to explore that side of themselves under the guardianship of the student council president. More easygoing students could spend their time after school as they wished, as long as they were mindful of personal responsibility. The fact that the poster boy of independence was the student council vice president indicated just how vast the spectrum was.
Aozaki, iruga?
Tobimaru Tsukiji threw open the door to the satellite student council room, the rumored location for their secret meetings. Despite all appearances, it was the student council vice president who also happened to be the poor soul responsible for executing the student council's dirty work. One person was waiting for him in the cramped room. Student council president, Aoko Ozaki, sat imperiously in a folding chair, glaring at Tobimaru and his boisterous entrance.
相変わらず寒いなこの部屋。なあ、今度ストーブ
Just
購
bring
入
one
しよ
from
うぜ。
home. So as not to succumb to Aoko's oppressive silence, Tobimaru opened with some casual small talk.
お疲れ様。ところであんた、何しに来たのか分かってる？
Nope.
まあな。ただ、事務的に話すのって寒いじゃねえか。
Yeah, very business.
少しぐらい世間話でもしねえとつまらねえだろ。
Yeah, you gotta work up to it. Tobimaru closed the door and sat down across from Aoko. He was holding a blue envelope.
こういう時は無駄口は叩かない方がいいわよ。なんとなくプロっぽいでしょ。
なる。いや。
What did you catch on to? Because whatever it was, it just passed me right by. Tobimaru was halfway to agreeing with Aoko before he caught himself and began to shake his head. As much as Tobimaru enjoyed the lack of red tape in his new line of work, he was not ready to turn full spy on his first day on the job.
それで、調べ終わったの？
ああ、ついさっき最後の聴取を済ませてきた。詳しいことはその封筒に入ってる。お前から渡された例のファイルもそんなか。
I've never seen a blue envelope like that. Usually they're just like yellow manila. He tossed the envelope on the table.
そう。
Alko picked it up and began to scan through the documents that were inside. She entered her own little world, not sparing the slightest bit of attention for Tobimaru. If ignoring other people were a skill, she would be a master at it.
なあ、
何？
一つ聞きたいんだけどよ。
Yeah, what's with this like fucking list
だか
shit?
ら何？
The room was filled with a chilling silence. Alko continued reading without an ounce of emotion upon her face. Though Tobimaru kept up an air of indifference, his stare remained fixed intently on her.
青崎、そういうの作って楽しい？
楽しいわけないでしょ。こんなの作ったところであんまり使う機会なんてないんだから。
Well, you sure do it a lot.
そうか、ならいい。
Whether or not he was convinced, Tobimaru stood up from his chair with a disappointed expression.
最後まで読めばわかるだろうが、あんまり確証は取れなかったぜ。というより、おとといあの辺りにいた生徒はいないって話になりそうだ。まあ断定はできないけどな。
No longer concerned over his task, Tobimaru headed towards the door, as if to say it was out of his hands.
そうだ。そういえば、一人だけ該当しなかったやつがいる。季節外れの転入生までは、青崎も調べきれなかったみてえじゃねえか。
Alko raised her head ever so slightly. He was right. The recent transfer student was not included within the scope of her investigation.
そんなわけで、その字に関しては調べてない
Simple
ぜ。
oversight, or, maybe you don't want to have to suspect him.
まあ、あいつならいつだろうと遅くまでバイトだろうが。いや、人殺しを見たなんてこと口走ってるようじゃ、家で悪い夢でも見てたのかもしれねえか。
Tobimaru cheerfully left the student council room. Simultaneously, Alko felt her fingers go numb, and the documents she was holding spilled all over the table.
そんな、まさかね。
She broke out into a cold sweat and tried to tell herself that there must be some kind of mistake. However, the uncomfortable feeling in her gut would simply not go away, perhaps because her intuition was almost always right at times like these.
バカらしい。
And yet, she knew what she had to do. She would not hesitate to kill Tobimaru if he had been the witness. But if it was him? Just considering the possibility caused her blood to run cold. Would you fucking take a nice fucking bright-eyed puppy out behind the shed and just shoot it in the back of the head? Alko put her forehead in her hands and began to brood. And then, suddenly... Let us talk choice. You will always be faced with choices. A virtuous fool and a wicked sage. You cannot save both. You must pick one. That is the freedom granted to you. 2 years earlier, Alko muttered the words offered by her grandfather the day she replaced her elder sister as his successor and let out a sigh of lament.
すごくバカみたい。
She laughed at her own intuition. But it was no joke. If only those words had never been said. Alko locked up the student council room and left for the day. Calmly, as though nothing untoward had happened. She greeted the students as they passed by in the halls. She was almost shocked by how natural she seemed. There were still plenty of students at the school. The grounds were noisy with the chattering students who had finished the day, but had yet to head home. Others still had club activities. The gray sky looked ready to pour, but nobody seemed to pay it any mind. Amidst the clamor, Aoko hastened to the school gate. She passed by some students in animated conversation. They seemed to be talking about their after-school plans. Apparently, they were adamant about maximizing their free time. She could not figure how they could possibly be so irresponsibly focused on fun, but at the same time was in no mood to make fun of or feel envious of them. 2 short years prior, she had been just like them.
根は冷めてるのかな、私って。
She retied her scarf, this time more tightly, to give it an air of solitude, but she was fooling no one. After all, but people who feign solitude are really masking his rejection.
そうよね。孤独っていうのはああいうのを言うもんでしょうし。
The area around the school gate was busier than usual. A group of boys appeared to be huddled behind it. Their transparent attempt to be discreet in terms of both location and loudness of voices did nothing to hide the fact that they were noisily arguing about a girl standing alone on the other side of the street. Your escort is here, milady. The girl was cloaked in a black cape. At first glance, it could have been mistaken for normal attire, but those from Misaki could tell that she wore the uniform of a prestigious girls' school. That's their winter uniform? Looks cozy. That school had no connection to Misaki High in any way, shape, or form. The 2 schools were miles apart, both physically and spiritually. A member of that school's student body was a rare sight, as the majority were forced to live in the school dorm. Oh god, that's a lot of vowels, one after another. Reian? Reian. Sure. Reian Girls Academy had a reputation as a school for princesses, and it was rare indeed for one to be slumming it with the common folk. That alone would have been enough to cause the ruckus amongst the boys. This girl looked the epitome of class. One could not help but describe the standing figure as charming. The way she silently, motionlessly waited was reminiscent of a meticulously composed portrait. Aoko took one look at her before instantly recalling that one word. Solitude.
まったくうちの男子どもは家に帰りもせず陰でコソコソやってるのはそういうこと。
Disgusted, Aoko barged through the gate. At this point, she would normally head home, but today she crossed the street towards the waiting girl.
あれなるは生徒会長様。くそ、追っ払う気なのかよ。痛いんならいつまでだっていさせてあげればいいじゃんか。
Don't kill her!
てか怒られる？怒られるのあの天使。よその生徒でも校門前にいるぐらいなら。
Nah, this is her turf. Someone's gotta die.
けど。青子女子は容赦ねえからな。下手すると平手だぜ。平手。
Yeah, what is this challenge? The boys ran their mouths behind her back. Not in the mood to shut them up, Aoko walked right up to the girl and offered an informal wave.
どうしたのアリス？こんなところに来たって何も面白いことはないって言ったのに。
ありえねえ!
What a shock, they know each other. Aoko heard the boys by the gate lose their collective minds, and did her best to ignore them.
あのことを確かめに。青子、
That was a long pause.
あの人たち邪魔なんだけど。
分かってる。
Sure are.
今追っ払うから。
In contrast to Alice's small voice, Aoko spoke loud and clear. Naturally, this was on purpose, so as to deal with a riffraff by the gate all at once.
会長こっち来んぞ。おい押すなよ。後ろのやつどけって。俺いやでも。
Yep,
この
scram.
子会長と知り合いなんでしょ。うまく会長に紹介してもらうとか。
No.
さすが一年坊主。まだ戦場の現実ってもんを理解していねえ。
Yep, no one to fold him, kid.
死の間際までいいよ。
Perhaps because too many of them had gathered in one place, the mob entered a frenzied panic as they tried to escape. Aoko addressed them all.
さーて、部活動があるわけでもなし、 ただ家に帰るだけの帰宅部の皆さん、こんなところで
there's a
何
go home
を集ま
early
ってるのか
club.
教
Oh, nice.
えてくれる？
Yeah, Sojiro can just join that. The student council president stared daggers at the boys.
何しろ試験前だもの。
Yeah, don't you got some studying to be
気
doing?
になることなら私も教えてほしいけど、まさかガン首並べて女学院のお嬢様を眺めてただけ。
Yeah, that would look real bad if someone fucking ratted on your teachers to explain for your bad grades and then you got called into the fucking student counseling room.
声をかける勇気もなくて眺めてただけ。
That kind of makes like the student
なんてこと。
council office and the counseling office together in my head. Not one of them was brave enough to admit that this hit on the nail. What? Not one of them was brave enough to admit that this hit the nail on the head. If any of them had such courage, they would have already been chatting the young lady up.
いや、僕教室にちょっと忘れ物が。
Don't worry, kids. You'll eventually learn that you can just shoot your shot, and you know, if you get brushed off, then you know, just like, well, at least I tried, and you go about your day.
こんなオチならダメ元で玉砕しとくんだった。天文部に行って双眼鏡借りるのどうだ？屋上からお顔を賜るとか。
That's just creepy.
天文部にそんなのねえよ。あるとしたら野鳥同好会じゃね？
それ先月会長が潰したじゃん。鳥めでてる暇があるなら彼女作れって。
ああ、彼女作れですか。くそ、じゃあな会長、また明日。
Yep, fucking scram, you losers. And with those oh so charming remarks, the boys scattered with their tails between their legs.
楽しそうね、青子。
あ、わかる？
Aoko's response slipped out all too easily. In truth, there was not that many bad apples at Misaki High, and dealing with them wasn't really that bad.
で、ここまで出向くってことは何か分かったの？
結界に残っていた気配の識別は、あとはここで確かめればいいだけよ。
そう。ん？アリス、いつからここに？
Don't say all day.
下校時刻から。
Damn, you fucking ran over here quick then. So she had been here for roughly an hour. Standing in the same place for an hour would be taxing for someone as sensitive to the cold as Alice.
悪いわね、無理させて。
It's fucking killing her back too. Like if you can't even move, like it's like between your shoulders in your back. When I was in the honor guard, we had to like stand for like an hour at some funerals. This is what really made me hate Catholics and Freemasons. They just fucking drag on and on and on. And they always have their itineraries planned, and the honor guard always goes last in those. The best is when you show up to a funeral, and they're like, oh, you know, what do you guys normally do? And that's when we hit them with, traditionally, we go first. So that way we can be fucking done in like 15 minutes and then head down to Denny's and get like some fucking... get some Bloody Marys and like cocktails. And of course, you know, we strut in there in our nice dress uniforms, so some old folk always pay for us. You know, it's you gotta enjoy the little things in life, like getting your food paid for you.
別に好きでやってることだから。
As she spoke, her black eyes were fixed upon the gate and the students passing through it. She had likely been observing the gate in this manner for the past hour.
私を待ってたわけじゃないんでしょ？今からでも付き合うわ。
Alice nodded in assent. If Alice was still here, it meant that she had not found the witness yet. If she had found this student, Alice would have already gone home she would have gone home ahead of Aoko and begun to research the student's background.
私の方はダメだった。
Little white lie. She reported the results of Tobimaru's investigation. Alice remained silent. With that, the conversation ended, leaving the two to silently endure the freezing wind. The silent stakeout dragged on endlessly. Students continued to pass the gate, each shocked at the sight of the unusual combo, and head home. After 20 minutes, Aoko let a sigh escape her mouth, perhaps from boredom, perhaps from the cold, or perhaps from both.
ねえ、アリス。帰り黎明に寄ってかない？
Was that like a cafe? Aoko quickly turned to Alice to catch her reaction. Dawn was the name of one of Aoko's favorite coffee shops. Offering no clear indication as to whether she was critical of Aoko's blasé attitude or agreeing to her whims, Alice's gaze shifted ever so slightly. Aoko followed her stare.
あれ、青崎も待ち合わせか?
The sudden voice took her off guard. Sorry, Aoko, didn't mean to misgender you there. There was only one person who spoke with this gentle, good-natured tone.
そう。やっぱそうなるわけか。
Turning her back to Alice, Aoko moved her focus to the newly appeared student.
それで、今日は何の用?
All politeness flew out the window. Already in a bad mood, Aoko's mood plummeted the longer she looked at Sojiro. The subtlety of her expression, however, was lost on him.
いや、これから駅前で水泳部の部長と待ち合
Aoko's
わせ
always
な
in
ん
a
だけ
bad
ど、
mood. Nothing
その
normal.
ことでお礼を言っておきたくて。
Just fucking rubbing fucking salt into her wounded heart there, bud. Well, that was completely unexpected. Thanks. Joining a club. Aoko had a hunch that he was about to say something brainless.
ふーん。お礼って、お礼参りってこと?
Nah, that's just what you would do. He's, you know, it's like, oh, I have an opportunity to make some new friends now. And, you know, it's something to do and, you know, fit in more with the student body. Thanks. Fortunately, Sojiro was completely unaware of the more sinister implications of the word payback.
よくわからないけど、そんな大したことじゃないよ。ただ、水泳部は夏までそう忙しくないって話だったから。
Well, yeah. Unless the school has like an indoor pool, which it's hard to tell from the outside, but I don't think it does. Neither did my school. You know, growing up, we had to go to the YMCA. Not that I was in the swim club, just we as in the people at my school for those kinds of activities. Sojiro was just about to thank her for recommending a club that would not take up much of his time, and Aoko cut him off with an expression of disinterest.
当然でしょ。幽霊部員になりそうな生徒なんて紹介できないから。忙しいあなたでも務まりそうな場所があったから口に出しただけよ。
なるほど、無駄がないね。
Oh wow, thank you for putting so much thought into my situation. How kind of you. His open admiration for her sapped Aoko's will to fight. Finding a suitable club and negotiating with its captain hadn't been an efficient use of her time at all.
とにかくお世話になったから、それで礼を言っときたくて。
Sojiro gratefully dipped his head, but not before the flustered Aoko stopped him.
よしてよ。今あなたにそんなことされても迷惑だから。
Yeah, you're gonna make it harder to kill you later.
それで、水泳部はどう? やっていけそう?
No, you're doing small talk! An awkwardness infiltrated her previous sharp gaze. Sojiro was able to pick up on the odd change in her behavior, but could not define its reason. So he simply started with what he knew so far and reported the most recent information he had.
ああ、水泳部はクビになった。
From the mountains, you probably don't know how to swim.
なんでよ!
Aoko instinctively shouted out an unexpected response. Like a human jack-in-the-box. This unexpected development threw her mind into a tizzy, and she momentarily forgot the complicated feeling she had been wrestling with.
だって今から待ち合わせだって。
それはこれからヤシロギの温水プールに連れて行ってくれるからだよ。
Yeah, teaching him how to swim. Sojiro stated this very matter-of-factly to the still reeling Aoko.
話がつながらない。そこまでうまくいってるのに、どうして入部を拒否されるのよ、あんたは。
そりゃ、俺が泳げないからだろ。
But he's so nice that, you know, he's gonna teach him to learn how to swim. Aoko reached up with her fingers and pinched the bridge of her nose as she processed his answer.
しずきくん、昨日の私の質問は覚えてる？走るのか泳ぐのか、どっちがいいかってやつ。私の記憶は正しいけど、一応確認しておくわね。あなた、 確かに泳ぐ方だって言ったけど。
Yes, what's your reasoning behind this answer?
昔から泳げないのはなんとか克服したかったんだ。反対に走
Oh
る
yeah,
方が
look how
得意だけど
spindly you are. I have the opposite problem. I'm built like a fucking rectangle. Like straight up like a mini fridge. With like a little short stubby legs. And of course, I'm flat-footed, and according to the foot doctor I went to when I got my feet scanned for special like inserts to my shoes in order to like fix my ankles, he's like, oh yeah, you're also knock-kneed. I'm like, fucking great. So he's like, do you ever have any like pains or whatever like after you run? I'm like, always. He's like, yeah, that explains it. You'll never keep up with the Ethiopians in the Boston Marathon. That was his words verbatim. And I'm like, yep. You are correct on that one. Her energy spent, Ako finally understood.
俺が1年なら1から鍛えてくれたらしいんだけど。
Yeah, you're already halfway through your school year.
あと3ヶ月で
Oh,
3年
your
になる身
school
分なのに
life.
金槌の部員は雇えないそうだ。
Mm-hmm.
けど部長が親身になってくれて、これから泳ぎを教えてくれることになったんだよ。
Sojour's words were spoken from a place of joy, a fact that failed to reach Alko.
はあ、つまり欠陥品を売りつけたってわけか。こりゃ水泳部の部長に合わす顔がないと。
Just be exasperated and
ちょっと待った。
say, he never told me he can't swim. Is the captain a
し
girl?
ずきくん、水泳部の部長って。
Ooh, is this a date? She stopped herself short of a girl. She was afraid of how that might look, that she might not be able to rein herself in if she started.
もういいわ。気持ちは分かったから、どこか遠くにいてくれない？少し疲れてて、とてもじゃないけどあな
It's
たの
not
相
like
手
that's
はしてい
even
られな
on
い。
his radar at all.
飛び丸もそんなことを言ってたな。青崎は昨日と今日、珍しく疲れてるって。何かあったのか？
ちょっとね。でもいいの。解決したみたいだから。
Yep, now she has the resolve to kill you once again.
それよ
Be
り、
gone.
しずきくんはどう見える？私、そんなに疲れて見えるのかな？
I mean, you look kind of mad, but that's kind of like your resting face, so it's hard to tell. Why had she asked him this? Blurting out things for no reason and on impulse. This was not unusual for Alko. Perhaps it was because she realized that this would be their last chance to have a normal conversation. After a few moments of contemplation, Sojiro conjured up a grin and cut straight through the tension.
そうだな。疲れているというより、生き生きしているように見える。仕方なく畑を耕していた僕に、久しぶりに狩りに出ることになって、機嫌を上げている感じだ。
You seem so cheerful. Like you were so happy for her. Without thinking, Ako's hands went to her cheeks. If what he said were true, then she was grinning from ear to ear. There's just no way she would have made such a mistake.
とにかくありがとう。じゃあ、また明日。
Perhaps still not comfortable enough to wave to her, he said his goodbye with sincerity in his voice and a smile, and took his leave.
待って。こんな話があるの。聞いてから言って。
Alko called out to him. Her voice was cold as she admonished herself for having been somewhat affable earlier.
Hmm?
I totally almost said a fable. I'm like, no, that's not it.
意味のない例え話よ。そうね。あなたが空腹で死にそうな時、目の前に同じように空腹で死にそうな2匹の動物がいるとするわ。しずきくんに銃をあげる。それでどちらかの動物を撃って。右はライオンで、左は子猫。選ぶのはあなたの自由だから。
If we're doing hypotheticals, am I able to like store the meat for preservation for later to eat? If so, then probably the lion. But if like it's gonna go bad, like if it's just shoot and take what you can, then probably well, kitten's real small. That's not a lot. I was thinking like full-size cat. It was a fable-like moral dilemma, especially the way which it was cruel and rather preachy. There's like an extra space between the it and was, and that threw me off. The kind that if you thought too hard about, you would never find an answer. Sojiro answered quickly and calmly.
いや、撃たないと思うよ。だって自分の好きにしていいんだろ。
I mean, that's
それに
always
ほら、空腹ならお互い様だ。
that's always an answer. He's not in the least fazed by the dilemma. He gave the most innocent response. So innocent, in fact, it would give anyone pause.
長生きするわ、あなた。
すごいセリフだな。そんなことを言われたのは多分君が初めてだ。
Yeah, especially with that fucking injury on your neck that we still don't know what it is. Adorning his face with a smile wholly out of sync with his comment.
何よそれ。
She regretted stopping him. Only she had just watched him go, this conversation would have never happened. Sojiro Suzuki made his way down the sloped street. Today, just like every day, probably had to work late again. Only Aoko and Alice remained, with Alice doing what she could to simply blend in.
つくづくこっちのペースを乱してくれるわね。あの人畜無害の田舎者は。
He's too good of a person. Aoko clenched her fist tightly as she cursed out loud. Anything to prevent herself from screaming at the top of her lungs. Whether that scream would be directed towards Sojiro or towards herself was another matter entirely.
Aoko.
Aoko heard Alice's soft voice behind her. Aoko knew what she was going to say, as she had known the entire time. Ever since Alice, having shown no reaction to any of the other students, changed her expression upon seeing Sojiro.
言わなくてもいい。あいつでしょ、目撃者は。
Her voice was cold as ice. It was the voice of someone talking about a complete stranger. The lion and the kitten. There were pros and cons of choosing either of these animals, the point being that she had asked him to choose one of them. In terms of risk, the lion was the more dangerous choice. The instant the gun was pointed at it, there was a chance it would fight back. I mean, probably not, because a lion doesn't know what a gun is. Those who choose the lion require more courage, but any sense of guilt that came with holding a gun would be forgotten. Lions are fierce creatures. A poor excuse to shoot an animal, perhaps, but one that certainly alleviated the guilt. But what about the kitten, the weaker creature? It goes without saying that the kitten would be the easier target of the two, but choosing it would be a disquieting decision for anyone. Even if the kitten had no chance to survive, it was still too senseless to carry out. And Aoko, Sojiro was that choice.
てっきり私もそうだと思う。
Yeah, pretty close to my analogy of taking like a fucking bright-eyed puppy behind the shed. When she felt that sinking feeling in the student council room, she ignored it. There was no getting around what must be done, she told herself. Until, that is, Sojiro went and said what he did, causing her resolve to waver. But the discomfort in her chest did not stem from any guilt she might have felt. She could care less for Sojiro. He was weak and would be incredibly easy to deal with. Yet, for some reason, she could not dispel her reservations. A transfer student who moved to the city from the middle of nowhere with no family to speak of. Few would notice if he were to suddenly disappear compared to a person of some renown. If she were to kill him, it would be as simple as wringing a cat's neck. And it all served just to piss her off. It was too lucky. Like everything was neatly handed to her, she wanted to just drop kick it right into orbit.
信じられない。私嫌がってる。これは違う。
Yeah, well, things usually aren't what they're supposed to be.
こんなの私じゃない。
Standing beside her, Alice heard all the muttering. Nevertheless, she seemed to ignore it and said,
彼、首に布を巻いていたわね。
a wholly unrelated topic. Aoko returned to her senses.
首？
Yeah, he's wrapped in bandages.
ええ。水泳部の首とかけていたのかしら。
What? Oh, you mean he can't go, like, competitively swimming with an injury like that? Alice had put much thought into this, as if it had a deeper meaning to her somehow.
そういえば、あいつ初めて会った時も首に布巻いてたっけ？襟を行儀よく締めてるから目立たないけど。
It's pretty obvious. The conversation turned to idle nonsense, not idle sense, or whatever I was going to say. And though it solved none of their current problems, it did help calm Aoko's frazzled nerves.
Thank you. 落ち着いたわ、アリス。
Yeah, do you have what it takes in you to shoot an injured kitten?
それと、気合も入った。ゼンは急げ。あいつが言いふらす前に決着をつけよう。
Pepped up once more, Aoko turned her back to the school gates. For now, they would retire to the mansion and prepare for battle.
いいけど、いつどこで彼を殺すの？
Real blunt with it, but I appreciate it. She said quietly so as not to be overheard by anyone else. Normally, Aoko had to rein in that side of Alice, out in the open as they were. But this was far from a normal situation.
今日の夜、場所はとっておきの夢の国よ。
She gave a fearless laugh. Strangely pleasant sound, like the kind one would make when meeting their lover. Yeah, go meet him at his part-time job. Hey, look at that. I was right. I'm so fucking smart. Any babe. Any bae? Hey, what's up, bae? But anyway, with that, that is where we're going to end it here for today. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell. I'll see you all next time for the next episode of Mihoyo, where I will make any cuts that are necessary when I leave the computer to go either like get something else to drink or deal with the after effects of drinking like a pot and a half of coffee before recording. So, see you guys all then later, where we will have a great magic battle in an abandoned amusement park. I'm sure there'll be some great CGs and visuals. Catch you guys then. Later. Bye.